Shalom. First, I want to start by giving all honor, praise, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahushai, Bahashim, Rakah HaKadosh. Give double honors to your apostles, elders, and bishops of Great Millstone, from whom I've learned this truth. Shalom to the 144,000 elect. I am Mayakala, coming to you with part 10 of How Do I Know, or How Do We Know? And when I say we, I'm referring to the so-called blacks, Latinos, and the Native Americans of this land that you call America. And this is going to be part 10. And I know we've been in Genesis for a while, and it's been looking like I'm going through it just about every chapter, but I'm not going to be going through every chapter. I just want to go through a few chapters that are consecutive, just until we cover the children of Jacob, the sons of Jacob, who are the progenitors of the 12 tribes that make up the nation of Israel. And as we left off on in Genesis chapter 29. I'm going to be starting in Genesis chapter 30. We've already covered the first 4 sons bared by Leah. And we're going into chapter 30. And I did initially say that we were going to go into the characteristics of each of those 4 sons brought forth by Leah, but I'm going to hold off on that. I just want to make sure that we get through all the sons of Jacob, and then, Lord willing, we'll be able to go back over the characteristics. But I'm going to give you the Hebrew pronunciation of their names, and I'm going to start off, like I said, in Genesis chapter 30. And in verse 1, it reads, "And Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children. And Rachel envied her sister, and said unto Jacob, Give me children, or else I die. And Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, Am I in the Most High's stead, who hath withheld thee the fruit of thy womb? And she said, Behold, my maid Bilhah, go in unto her, and she bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her." Now I'm going to stop right there just for a minute, because that sounds like somebody we've already covered. That sounds like Sarah. And I'm going to go back to Genesis chapter 16. And I'm just going to read 1 through 3 just to give you a reminder, but that Sarah had did the same thing. When she was barren and couldn't bring forth children, she wanted to have her maid, and she wanted Abraham to go into her and have children by her. It says, "Now Sarah, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had a handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarah said to Abram, Behold now, the Lord Yahweh hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go into my maid. It may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarah. And Sarah, Abram's wife, took Hagar her maid, the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife." So we see that it's almost the same thing being repeated here, but only it's being repeated by Rachel. So I'm going to go back over to Genesis chapter 30. and I'm at verse 4 now. It says, and she gave him Bilhah, her handmaid, to wife, and Jacob went in unto her. And Bilhah conceived and bare son of Jacob, bare a son, and bare Jacob a son, Shalaki. And Rachel said, the Most High hath judged me, and hath also heard my voice, and hath given me a son. Therefore called she his name Dan. And Dan would be one of the children brought forth by Bilhah. However, Dan is not one of the tribes of the 12 tribes of Israel. Dan would be mixed in with the other tribes. And I'm going to continue on. And I'm at verse 7. It says, and Bilhah, Rachel's maid, conceived again, and bare Jacob a second son. And Rachel said, with great wrestling have I wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed. And she called his name Naphtali. Now in the Hebrew, his name would be Naphtaliah, which means my wrestling. Because as we just heard her say, and I'm going to read chapter 8 again, or verse 8 again, it says, and Rachel said, with great wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed. And she called his name Naphtali. So because she wrestled with her sister, they were kind of like having a contest now to bring forth children for Jacob. So that Naphtaliah means my wrestling. And I'm just going to go to chapter 49 just to back that up to see what it says there. And I'm going to go down to verse 21, and it says, Naphtali is a hind let loose. He giveth goodly words. And once we go into the meanings of these names and where these peoples dwell at in this current modern day, that these descriptions that are given in Genesis chapter 49 will make more sense, and we'll be able to go through those. I'm going to go back over to Genesis chapter 30 and continue on. And I'm going to read straight through these because we're going to go through the sons that were brought forth by Zilpah, the maid of Rachel. Verse 8, it says, and Rachel with great wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed. And she called his name Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had left bearing, she took Zilpah her maid and gave her Jacob to wife. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob's son. And Leah said, a truth cometh. So this is Leah now. Leah's having another child, another son for Jacob. Or Shalakia, Zilpah, Leah's maid. So I'm going to read verse 9 again. It says, when Leah saw that she had left barren, she took Zilpah her maid and gave her Jacob to wife. So now we see that Jacob has both sisters, Leah and Rachel, as his wife, and he has gone into both of their maids Verse 10, it says, and Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a son. And Leah said, a troop cometh. And she called his name Gad. And in the Hebrew, that name Gad is pronounced Gad. And it means troop. And we're going to go to Genesis 49 again and look at verse 19. It says, Gad, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last. This is just backing up that these names have meaning behind them, and their meaning are coming from the bearers of these children. I'm going to read verse 11 again. I'm back in chapter 30. It says, and Leah said, a troop cometh. And she called his name Gad. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a second son. So this is Zilpah. She's bearing a second son for Jacob. And Leah said, happy am I, for the daughters will call me blessed. And she called his name Asher. So she says, happy am I. She called his name Asher. So Asher means happy. And in the Hebrew, it is pronounced Ashar. We're going to go to chapter 49 and look at verse 20. And it says, out of Asher, his bread shall be fat, and he shall yield royal dainties. So just to back it up, like I said, these pronunciations, along with where these tribes are in modern times, will give more light into why they are described the way they are described here in chapter 49. So we've gone with 4 more children being brought forth, one by the handmaid of Rachel's maid, and 3 more by the maid of Leah. And I'm going to end this here because we're just going to take our time and we're going to go through the remaining sons, Lord willing, on the next lesson, and we'll be able to go a little further. And like I said, we're not going to go into every chapter in Genesis. We're going to just skip around just because I want to give you the pertinent information as to where these tribes are today. And Lord willing, we'll be able to touch upon and finish up on those names on the rest of the progenitors of the 12 tribes of Israel. I'm going to stop and give all praise and honor and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah HaKadosh. Shalom.